If you make the attack as contemplated, it will be the greatest slaughter of the war. There isn't infantry enough in our whole army to carry those heights if they are well defended." Surprised and irritated, Burnside turned to Lieutenant Colonel Joseph H. Taylor and asked his thoughts. Aware of the Confederate firepower that awaited them, he said, "The carrying out of your plan will be murder, not warfare." Indeed, an assured James Longstreet told his commanding general that if you put every man in a blue uniform in front of my position and give me enough ammunition, I will kill every one. Around 10 a.m., the sun burned the fog away on this part of the battlefield, and again, like earlier to the south, it seemed like the raising of a great curtain on a great stage.
Seems a terrible long distance up that hill.
It'll be shortened by those in the front.
Begging your pardon, sir. The only thing that'll be shortened by those in front is their lives.
The first assault fell to men under Brigadier General William H. French. Incredibly, his men made it across the mill race, out in the middle of the open plain, and reformed under the protection of its western bank. Then they moved forward as one, as if on parade. French's 1st Brigade under Brigadier General Nathan Kimball took the lead, and it withered under murderous Confederate fire and went to the ground, 1/4 of its number down and Kimball wounded. Next, about 150 yards behind, the brigade of Colonel John W. Andrews. They moved to fill the great bloody gaps created by Confederate fire. Andrews went down, wounded. His 10th New York lost 9 of its 11 officers in less than an hour. Next, it was the brigade of Colonel Oliver H. Palmer. They, too, were forced to the ground. Yes, although some, incredibly, advanced to about 100 yards from the flaming stone wall, an entire division, 3 brigades, were shattered and broken. 1,160 casualties in about an hour. Reinforced during French's attack by 2 South Carolina regiments and 2 from North Carolina, the Confederates prepared for the next attack, and it came right about 1 p.m. It was the division under Major General Winfield Scott Hancock. First, he sent in a brigade commanded by Colonel Samuel Zook. It pushed to about 100 yards from the flaming wall. Some from the 53rd Pennsylvania actually got within 50 yards, but all too went to the ground. 1/3 of the brigade casualties. The 57th New York reduced to 50 men.
Irish Brigade, move out! Irish Brigade! At the double quick!
Then advanced a unit of some renown, the Irish Brigade. With sprigs of boxwood in their kepis, some 1,200 men under the green flag of Erin advanced. They did so while fire from the stone wall was so intense it reminded one soldier of heat lightning. One regiment of Confederate tormentors was the 24th Georgia, comprised of Irishmen. Some aimed and fired through tears. A few of the Union Brigade got as close as 25 yards to the stone wall, but with 40% of the brigade casualties, Thomas Marr's Irishmen also went to the ground. 545 of 1,200 of his Irish Brigade casualties.
What are those boys doing fighting in blue? Don't they know we're fighting for our independence? They learn nothing at all at the hands of the English.
These brave Irishmen. They're our brothers. They've been misled to their fates.
Now Hancock's 3rd Brigade was fed into the meat grinder. The former Vermont schoolteacher Brigadier General John C. Caldwell took his 2,000-man brigade in. One of his regiments, the 5th New Hampshire, was led by Colonel E. E. Cross. Already twice wounded in the war, he had had a premonition that this would be his last battle. Before going into action, he made his will, inventoried his property, packed everything he owned into a trunk, locked it, and gave the key to the regimental chaplain. Though horribly wounded this day, he would survive. but the division in which his brigade was organized, Hancock's, was wrecked. With 42% casualties, the division suffered the highest divisional loss in any one battle for the entire war. Despite the slaughter, there would be 5 more divisional attacks. Second Corps Commander Major General Darius Couch was in the cupola of the Fredericksburg courthouse. From there, he watched in horror. At one point, after 2 of his divisions had been shattered, he turned to another and exclaimed, "Oh, great God, see how our men, our poor fellows, are falling." The entire plain before him was covered with the wreckage of battle. Dead men and horses, blue-clad soldiers falling as they advanced, panicked men fleeing to the rear. To Couch, it was like watching snow fall upon warm ground. Still, the orders from east of the Rappahannock demanded more attacks. And so, in simultaneous fashion, the brigades of Brigadier Generals O. Howard and Samuel Sturgis went forward at about 2 p.m. 2 new blue waves crested at the stone wall, which was aflame from one end to the other. The results? The same. Their attacks stalled. Couch's Second Corps had taken nearly 4,000 casualties. Thus far, 10 brigades had been shattered, and there would be more. Major General Joseph Hooker was ordered to send forward elements from his 5th Corps. Hooker, aware that Burnside's plan was in shambles, raced to convince the commanding general to end the human holocaust. While he unsuccessfully tried to do so, Brigadier General Charles Griffin's division advanced. It was now between 3 and 3:30 in the afternoon, and its brigades, too, were cut down. Brigades led by Colonels James Barnes, Samuel Carroll, Jacob Schweitzer, and Thomas B. W. Stockton. In Schweitzer's brigade, the 32nd Massachusetts lost 1 of every 10 men in 10 minutes. It was now about 5 p.m. Sunlight was fading. Common soldiers hugging the ground before the stone wall, using their own dead for shields. All prayed for nightfall. And yet, thanks to a wildly erroneous report from one of Hancock's brigades that shifting Confederates were actually retreating, an order went to Brigadier General Andrew Humphreys to take his 4,500 in. As these Pennsylvanians moved forward, survivors from earlier attacks raised themselves to grab at belts, at pants, anything to try and pull men to the ground to save them from certain death. After Humphreys' repulse, 2 more brigades went in, both unsuccessful. And incredibly, in the fading light of day, 1 more attack. Rush Hawkins' brigade from the 9th Corps. It came well after 5 p.m. Men advancing in the long shadows, an eerie backdrop of twilight. Aimed at the Confederate right of the stone wall position, broken terrain, darkness, and southern fire drove it, too, to the ground. 7 divisional attacks, 18 brigades. In 6 hours of combat before the stone wall, not 1 man had even touched it. Back across the Rappahannock, Ambrose Burnside was not aware of the disaster. His army had suffered 12,653 casualties, some 7,000 to 9,000 of them in front of the wall at the foot of Marie's Heights. Where McClellan never knew when to start, it seemed Burnside did not know when to stop. During the evening, he incredibly planned to renew attacks at first light the next day. He announced that he personally would lead his old 9th Corps into battle. His staff and lieutenants talked him out of it. The night of the 13th, for those survivors pinned down on the plain in front of the stone wall, well, it was something from a nightmare. The temperature dropped. Wounded let slip pitiful cries for home and mother. Some froze to death. One of those trapped that night, the 20th Maine's Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. He spent the night between two dead men. A third served as his pillow. He used the flap of a dead man's overcoat to keep him from freezing. All night long, the otherworldly and unearthly sounds of the wounded and dying. And there was something else that night that was unearthly. Soldiers of both armies witnessed a rare display of the aurora borealis, the northern lights. To Confederates, it was God Almighty's celebration for yet another Southern victory. To Union soldiers, a horrible omen. The next day, the 14th, the plain before the stone wall was still a no-man's land. And that was the stage for one of the war's most memorable scenes. As reported by enough eyewitness accounts to give the story respectability, the sights and sounds of human distress on the other side of that stone wall moved one Confederate to ask permission for a daring act. It was Sergeant Richard Kirkland, Company G, 2nd South Carolina. Confronted by waves of pitiful cries from wounded Union soldiers, he, all of 19 years of age, felt compelled to do something, as he put it, to help those poor people crying for water. Given reluctant permission, he exchanged his rifle musket for filled canteens, and without a white flag of truce, risked his life to stand and become a target. He made his way over the stone wall, moved to the Union wounded closest to him, lifted heads, and gave water to those who had been exposed for hours. When Union soldiers recognized his act of humanity, they held their fire. So, too, did Confederates, while his mission of mercy continued. In the hell of battle, he, this angel of Marie's Heights, was an oasis of compassion. And yet, despite his heroic act, the beast that is war refused to acknowledge or remember, for already manufactured even that day a Federal bullet which would find him September the 20th, 1863, at a place called Chickamauga. Hit in the chest, he gasped to comrades, "I am done for. You can do me no good. Save yourselves and tell Pa I died right." Robbed of his destiny by civil war, Richard Rowland Kirkland, dead at 20. And though it took time and reflection, today he is remembered. At the foot of Marie's Heights, there is a memorial to him. Erected in 1965 on the battlefield, a plaque reads, "A hero of benevolence, at the risk of his own life, he gave his enemy drink at Fredericksburg."
We were young and bound for glory, itching for a fight like you, bringing hell and purgatory to the boys who wore the blue. And I thought I'd seen it all, till the day night wouldn't fall. Oh, how the sun did blaze, wouldn't go down for days. I got shot and lost my rifle when the first wave hit the rise, and the guns rolled out like thunder, and the black smoke burned my eyes. And I watched it all unfold, just the way the Bible told. Joshua's endless day, keeping the night at bay. And the soldiers kept a-coming till the ground looked like the sea of blue and gray. And I watched them from a distance, wondering if I would have fought or run away. The day the sun stood still, how they beat the bloody drums, and the seconds moved like hours, but the sunset never comes, and the cannons shake the ground, and the bullets test your will. Even shadows found no cover on that God-forsaken hill. The day the sun stood still.
The bravery and courage of their Irish brigade was extraordinary. Our men held their fire and cheered as the Irish bowed their heads and turned their shoulders as though breasting a storm of wind and hail. General George Pickett.
I watched them lean their shoulders to the fearful hail of lead, and I prayed for night to save us, and I cried and bowed my head, but the sun just kept creeping across a cold indifferent sky, casting a deadly glow on all the men below. All the hours in a lifetime don't add up to one whole minute in that song. And the heroes and the cowards look the same when they have fallen by the gun. The day the sun stood still and the north and south look west, but the evening star was sleeping and the daylight wouldn't rest. Out on the killing floor, red sun on the hill, shining down on all the dead men with a strange and eerie chill. The day the sun stood still. Do not judge what your brother does till you walked a mile, drank by bloody plow. Who's to say if you'll run or stay and fight? The day the sun stood still is just beneath the skin, in the soul of every soldier, every battle that he's in. The day the sun stood still will haunt your dreams at night and stalk you every sunrise, though you will not know it till. The day the sun stood still, how they beat the bloody drum, and the seconds move like hours, but the sunset never comes, and the cannon shake the ground, and the bullets test your will. Even shadows find a cover on some God-forsaken hill. The day the sun stood still. The day the sun stood still. The day the sun stood still.